Welcome to another episode of Inside the Barrel, where me and Dorian talk about what we do for work consulting in ServiceNow sphere. These are our short videos. We are coming up with a new name. I'm not sure that I enjoy Inside the Firkin, Dorian.
Yeah,
I
I
think the con-
I agree. Yeah. It's
yeah.
definitely confusing, and our SEO isn't working for us.
Yeah, Firkin's just not one of those words that roll off the tongue, is it? Anyways,
Yeah.
so we're doing another episode on the scripting patterns. So
Mhm.
shout out to Travis Tolson on his blog that started this whole thing. I believe we're on we're on the last one, which is supposed to be the best one. Is that right?
It is supposed to be the best one.
And so we'll get right into it.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah, so this is what Travis would call the module pattern. And it pretty much, the goal of it is to take all the best things from all of the other ones, whether that was the function pattern, whether that's the class pattern, whether that's the namespace pattern, and really put it all together. And so pretty much the pros is it allows you to, organize your functions under a single name. It's self-executing, so you'll notice this like function here. So it will just execute when called. It does support private functions and private variables, as seen here. And although it's not actually shown here that it's private, I'm just we'll show where it will become private. And I put this other pro that you normally can't test the private easily, right? So after it's final, you can't, but it's relatively easy to expose it for testing purposes and then hide it later. And so we'll show how you could do that. So just some of the cons. It's not the ServiceNow standard, obviously, and there isn't syntax highlighting. So you may see that relatively quickly. So what is nice is there are examples of this though utilized in ServiceNow. So if you ever get stuck or want to know how an advanced thing works in it, you can look up some of these examples for it. All right, so diving into what we've done and how it's different. So notice here it looks very similar to the namespace, right? It's this var equals. The difference is we're now self-executing, so it's just a function that executes directly. And then within it, you utilize it as if it was the namespace or just a set of functions that you have that you want to be called. So for example, in our set lockout, you can even call other functions within here just by referencing it. So it's not like an object. So there's no this in this case.
Right. Yep.
Um, and at the end, so after you define all your functions, what you want to expose, very similar to like the JavaScript export module, is done by the return here. So you're returning essentially an object that defines the like what is meant to actually be returned. So in this case, we're saying that when you call this, you have access to this function, which is defined here. So
Right, but not your private function if you don't define it.
correct. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
it'll be relatively easy to expose this for testing purposes. You just throw it in this return object as well, and you can then go and test it. So what does that look like in ATFs? So we have our similar ATF pattern. Nothing has changed here. First name, last name, whether they're locked out. An example of whether someone is locked out or not. And we have our test script. And so inside here, what you'll notice, this looks very similar to the namespace one. Notice that it's instantiated without the parentheses, so there won't be syntax highlighting. But the biggest thing that we changed so that our unit test passed this time is that since we don't have access to this private function, it's going to equal undefined, right? So when you try to call this, it's going to be equal to undefined. But if you call our normal function that we do expose that will correctly return the right results.
Right.
So let's go ahead and run this now. I mean, we're going to skip over breakpoints, but first one passed, second one passed.
Ooh, I like all the green. It's good.
Yeah. So, shout out to Travis for the fun exercise and walking through on this. He has the example, and he even goes into why it's his favorite pattern in this case. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm split here. And it's probably because I use the old original pattern the most, so it's very common to me, or very, easy to write because I'm so used to it. I could possibly see myself moving to that final one, the module one, but unless I have, really good use case for why, then I just don't see the outlay of what it's going to, the ROI on using it, right?
Yeah.
It's not a good one. I mean, I'm sure it's got its uses. I don't know. My day-to-day usage of script includes really, I don't think requires it, I guess.
So my main thinking behind like what's the true like would always want to use it use case here is potentially if you're building a custom app for like the store. And there's probably more benefits that you would get out of that. Especially like if you don't want people to use certain private functions of yours. Like I think that's kind of where I would see this. But
Okay, yeah.
like your normal consulting or customer instance, I think you would just stick to the class pattern. Just you get all the syntax highlighting, you get the ability to jump into a definition. It's a customer's instance, so you have all of the ACL already access for it, and
well, and you have to balance who you're giving your work to, right? If you're giving it to an admin group, I would be concerned about giving them something that they're not going to be used to either. How can they continue to support what we've given them if we've written it in different ways that they're not going to be accustomed to, So there's that aspect of it also. I mean, it's not like it's a huge change, but I don't want to add to their workload, so they're going to have to go through and try to figure out how we wrote stuff.
Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway for me on this is one, like put everything in script includes. I think that's kind of why we started this, right?
Someone keeps calling me out on that.
Yeah. And two, you have a pattern for ATFs to test it, right? So like you don't need to use a background script to test every time. And this way, when people are changing your scripts, you just run your ATFs again and you can determine whether or not it's passable to deploy, or even plug in some automation there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like that. Well, good. This was super fun. I enjoyed it. I'm glad we had five different patterns to talk about.
Yeah. And I just want to give us, a little clap. And yeah, I had fun. And if the community has other things that they want us to explore or walk through or figure out, feel free to comment or let us know. And we're happy to have people on and even jump into some of these things. So
yeah, if you'd like to be a guest, drop us a line.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone.
Okay.